Hello, everyone. Good morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. My name is Ojoma Ochai. I'm the managing partner of the Creative Economy practice at CC Hub that's running this Fashionomics Africa Accelerator program on behalf of African Development Bank. There's translation available. And so if you need translation into French or Arabic or French or Portuguese, please go to the interpretation button on the bottom of your screen, and you can choose a different language to listen in. Today's session is going to last for an hour and a half, and we'll be going through the overview of the program, as well as an overview of the creative economy and the fashion ecosystem in Africa. If you've got a question, please put it in the chat. You won't be able to unmute yourself. So if you've got any question or comment, please put it in the chat. As I mentioned, today's session is giving you an overview of the program, giving you an overview of the fashion and the creative economy ecosystem in Africa, and then we'll talk about trends in the African fashion sector. Can you make sure that your cameras are on if you can? You don't have to. Turn it on if you can. And if you can put it in the chat, what are you looking to get out of today's session? And what are you looking to get out of the program? Just as we start. As a reminder, there's translation available. And so if you need translation into any other language, French, Portuguese, or Arabic, use the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. But in the meantime, please tell us in the chat, what are you looking to get out of today's session? And what are you looking to get out of the program? In the course of the session, I will take some of your comments, but I'll move on. So just in terms of an overview for the program, I've introduced myself already. I'm the managing partner of the Creative Economy practice in Lagos, and I'm based in Lagos in Nigeria, although the practice works across Africa, which is why we've got so many participants from a range of countries on the continent today. I've also got my colleague, Omalabake Olagunju, who's also based in Lagos. She's our senior project associate. And she's going to be your main point of contact for the program, in addition to my colleague Wanjiku Njoroge, who's based in our office in Nairobi. You've probably already spoken to them or met them on the WhatsApp group or received an email from them. We're also working with another colleague, Yandele, who's based in Gaborone in Botswana. So for every session in the program, we have a number of ground rules. The first one is that you switch on your camera if you can. The second one is that you should use the chat box to ask questions. You will not be able to unmute yourself. And that's to control the background noise and people muting and talking in the background. Raise your hand if you want to say something, although because you can't unmute yourself, if you raise your hand, it will draw our attention to the chat, but you actually won't be able to unmute. Do participate effectively and actively. And the way that you participate is by asking questions, answering questions using the chat button, and then give space to other people to participate. Right, so as an overview of the program, I had asked what you're looking to get out of the session today. Thank you, Franklin. Franklin and Galim says he's looking forward to learning about how to transform their environmental initiative, Eco Designs, into a social enterprise that can revolutionize the African fashion industry in terms of cutting down its carbon footprints. That's really interesting, frankly. We have a session on the circular economy, and I'm sure that will be very useful to you alongside all the other sessions. Olayemi Idowu says they'd like to get introduced to the program today and all that's required of you through the program. And then they hope to network with other entrepreneurs and learn more about the fashion industry. We will do just that. Jacobina Nwale from Namibia, hello, is saying they're looking forward to hearing about the program details, looking forward to learning and scaling up their business. Juan, I hope I said that correctly. I think it's Juan Nsabie or Juan Nsabie, if you're saying it in English, is looking to strengthen their business and establish the brand globally. Keep the comments coming. I'm confident that we will address a lot of what you've asked. Brenda is saying, well, Brenda is introducing themselves. Brenda is from Zanzibar. Hello, Brenda. Sarah is looking forward to network with other fashion designers on the continent. So all of what you've mentioned is part of the program. This program will enable you to refine your business and your products with the help of industry experts. It will help you build sustainable business models. It will help you enhance or create operational and financial management processes. And it will help you enhance your investment readiness and capacity to attract funding. So we're going to measure progress throughout the program. We will send you a survey in the next few days to check your current understanding of these things. And then we'll check at different stages throughout the program. Every week, you will have 2 or 3 sessions. Some weeks you will have 2, some weeks you will have 3. There are 16 sessions in total for this program, 16. So in the next 8 weeks, you will have attended 16 different training sessions. They would be on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Thursdays. Some weeks will have 2 and some weeks will have 3. In addition to the 16 sessions, there'll be 2 community events, which are events that will be opened up to a group wider than this group of people, which you are strongly encouraged to attend. So the program structure is that there are 2 categories of participants. We have our community members, and then we have the accelerator participants. So for you on this call, you are the accelerator participants. As I mentioned, you've got 8 weeks of Zoom sessions like this. You've got, and those 8 weeks, you're going to have 16 sessions. You've also got access to a help desk. The help desk essentially is where you can ask any questions about the sessions or about the program. And then you can get specific answers that as it relates to your business. The 2,000 community members get access to the community sessions that I mentioned before. They will get only 2 of those sessions, and then they will have access to the recordings of these sessions with you. Now, after the 8 weeks, there will be a test, an assessment to check your understanding of the program. And that test will help us to cut down the 300 participants to 25 participants. Those 25 participants will get access to pitch training, and then they will get access to one-on-one coaching to do their pitches. You will then, at that stage, if you're one of the 25, you'll be invited to a demo day, a pitch competition. Those 12 participants will pitch on demo day. Demo day will be at some point in April. And then you will get a chance to win $20,000 US. The thing with demo day is, in addition to the official prize of $20,000, a lot of the judges have asked for introductions to the participants, either because they're investors or funders in the countries where those participants are located, or because they have programs that can support them. So there's the official $20,000 prize, but there's other benefits that those 12 participants that are pitching on demo day can access from the judges. Now, to progress to the next stage, I've talked about the fact that your first 300, and then we'll cut it down to 25, and then we'll cut it down to 12. To progress to the next stage at each point, 70% of attendance is required. So there are 16 training sessions. You have to attend at least 70% of those training sessions. You are strongly encouraged to attend the community events. And then you'll have to score at least 70% in the exam. So you need to have 70% attendance. You need to score at least 70% in the exam. And you are strongly encouraged to attend the community events for you to progress to the next stage and for you to get a certificate. We communicate with you through 4 main channels. One is Zoom, like today. This is where all the training sessions will happen. The 16 training sessions and the 2 community events that I mentioned will happen on Zoom. We also have a WhatsApp group, which if you have not joined the WhatsApp group, you will be added to the WhatsApp group, or you would have received a link for the WhatsApp group. So please do join the WhatsApp group. That's where the networking will happen. And that's where a lot of information sharing for the program will happen, in addition to email, I should say. There's also something called the Moodle platform. The Moodle platform is where you will get access to the recordings from these sessions. So every Zoom meeting that we have is recorded in English, in French, in Portuguese, and in Arabic. You will be able to view the recordings on the Moodle platform. The login details will be shared with you shortly. You can send all questions and all queries to Fashionomics Help Desk at cchub.africa. The email address is on your screen, but my colleagues will also put it on the chat. If you've got any inquiries for us, please don't send it to us on WhatsApp. Send it to us on the email fashionomicshelpdesk@cchub.africa. And that way we can track the request until it's responded to. Because WhatsApp will have several messages, it's very easy for us to miss messages on WhatsApp. So if you do have a question or a query, do send it to the help desk. Now, in terms of the content, I won't read it out to you. I already mentioned that there's 16 sessions. We sent you a list of those sessions by email. You have access to it, but the sessions cover different areas that will help you to scale your business and will help you to become more ready for investment. I'll pause here to see if there are any questions or comments on anything that I've shared before I proceed to the actual session for today. So if people can put in the chat, if you've got any question so far. Something else to bear in mind is that we take attendance for every session. As I mentioned, we need to know that you have attended 70% of the session. And the way that we will know you've attended is if your name matches what name you used to register for the program. So for example, if you say iPhone 2, there's no way we're gonna know that it's Boto or it's Blessing or it's Tolua Lokwe. So you have to make sure that your Zoom name matches the name that you used to register for the program. The recordings for all the sessions will be on the Moodle platform, and we will send you the login details for the Moodle platform. Jocelyn, you're annotating on the screen. If you can please not do that, thank you. The recordings will be on Moodle. From the final 12 person, there will be one winner for $20,000. The other winners, the other 12 will benefit from various other things. And that will be at the discretion of the jury. It's on a case-by-case basis, but there's only one winner who gets $20,000. We will, if more than 25 people meet the requirements from the 300, so more than 25 people cannot meet the requirements because it will be the top scoring 25. So there's the exam, there's the attendance, and then there's a question, a form that you're going to fill at that stage. And then we'll have a jury of about 7 people from across Africa who will look at the responses that you've provided, and they will score, and they will pick the top 25 from the 300 based on all of those factors. So we will not have more than 25. What happens to the last 12 participants? The last 12 participants get additional coaching on how to pitch, and one of the 12 will get a prize of $20,000. The name that you need to put on your Zoom is your actual name, your government name, the government name that you use to register for the Fashionomics Africa Accelerator. That should be your Zoom name so that we know that you're here. Somebody has asked me to go back before the slide about attendance. If you mean, I don't know if you mean this slide. This slide, we talked about 2,000 in the community. That's a different group. You are the 300. It will cut down to 25. It will cut down to 12, and then there will be one winner. If you cannot physically attend the class and you watch afterwards, does that count as absent? Yes, which is why we have 70% attendance. You don't have to attend every single session. However, you do have to attend in person. Well, when I say in person, I mean on Zoom while the session is happening, at least 70%. And then you can watch the 30% at another time. But if you don't attend and you watch afterwards, you are still marked as absent. Okay, if there's no more questions, and I'm just scrolling to see. I see that there's a name, iPhone XS Max. That doesn't count as a person. So whoever that is, you need to change your Zoom name to your actual government name so that we know that you've attended. Omalabake, if you can also put the translated questions. There's a question from Max in French. Okay, I'm going to move on now. We can come back to the chat and look at questions later. But I'm now going to move on to the main training topic for today. And the first thing we're going to look at is an overview of the creative economy. Does anybody know what we mean when we say creative economy? Do you mind putting it in the chat if you know what we mean by creative economy? While you're doing that, Precious is asking, how do you know that your names are marked on the attendance each meeting? If you attend, we will know because Zoom will give us a record of who joined. So it's automatically generated by Zoom. Can anybody guess in the chat what sectors are, when we say creative economy, what do we mean? What is the creative economy? While you're writing that, Franklin, there are 16 sessions in total. 70% of 16 is what we're marking. We're not marking per week. We're marking out of the 16. So you need to attend 70% of 16 sessions. Does anybody know what the creative economy is? Do you want to put it in the chat? Stella says human creativity. Well, no, Stella says any business in the space of creativity and self-expression. That is correct. Teresa Brown says human creativity and ideas. That is correct. Sariaka talks about all activities requiring writing, craftsmanship, and visual are correct. Absolutely. Juan talks about relating to arts and creativity. Absolutely. So a lot of people are talking about creativity, money generated around creativity. You can answer in any language you want. So you can respond in French or Arabic or Portuguese. Creativity, crafts, and ideas. So you all have a strong idea, or all of you that have commented, what the creative industries or the creative economy is. There are different definitions, and I just wanted to talk to you about, one, the sectors in the creative economy, but also the activities that happen in the creative economy, which is relevant to your business, because you need to think about what are the different activities to consider as you're running your business. So in the creative economy, there's the audiovisual sector that covers sectors like film, like television, like radio, like broadcasting. There's also the sector relating to cultural sites, right? So if you have any archaeological sites in your country, museums, libraries, exhibitions, and so on. That sector also includes creative services like architecture, advertising, creative R&D, cultural and recreational services. We also have design in that sector. And with design, we're talking about fashion design, which many of you in this group are working in, jewelry design, toys, graphic design, interior design, all those kinds of design are in the creative economy. The sector also covers new media, so sectors like software, video games, digitalized creative content. So when you're thinking about things like recorded music, this is where it will fall. And then we have the performing arts sector, which covers things like live music, theater, puppetry, circus. And then we have publishing and printed media like books and press. And then we have traditional cultural expressions like festivals and celebrations, and then visual arts. So all these sectors are what comprise what we would say the creative economy is. Now, for many people, when they think about these activities, they think about creativity and the activities related to producing creative outputs. And that is correct. So with the fashion sector, for example, you think about making the clothes or making the toys or making the jewelry or making the accessories or making the designs and the illustration. For sure, all of those things relate to the creative industries, and creative production is a key part of what happens. That is only, however, a small part of what is the creative economy. Because under creative production, we also have things like studios. If you're working in music, think about a studio where somebody goes to record the music. The equipment in that studio, the people working in that studio, they're not musicians, but they're also working in the creative economy. Think about, for fashion, if you manufacture in a production hub, everybody that works in that production hub, from the guard at the gates to the receptionist at the front desk, to the accountant, to the quality assurance person, to the floor manager, all of those people are working in the creative economy, but they're not creatives. And then when you think about even the technologies that you use to do your creative production, so some of you will use software for pattern cutting or for creating your designs. Think about the company that makes that software. They're working in the creative economy, even if they themselves are not working in fashion specifically. And then there are different technology solutions for specific fashion or creative sectors. All of those companies that work in that area are all in the creative production side of activities for the creative economy. Now, so if we stick with fashion, but all of these things happen in all the sectors, think about how you distribute. So you've made your clothes, you've made your accessories, you've made your design, you've designed your service. If nobody is using what you're selling, you haven't finished the job, right? So the next part of the creative economy ecosystem is around distribution and consumption. So let's say you make a product, whatever the product is, a dress, shoes, leatherwork, jewelry. Think about the retail store where you sell your product if you're selling on a physical space. Think about the social media where you're promoting your work. All of those things are part of the ecosystem for creativity. Because if you're a one-man business, you're probably doing everything by yourself. But once you start to scale, you need people that know how to do those things and people that are doing those things for your business to succeed. So you can't only focus on the creative side of things. You have to focus on the production and the quality of what you're producing, and you have to focus on distribution and consumption. There are also different types of technologies that enable distribution and consumption. So e-commerce platforms are another example. If you're putting your things on your products on e-commerce platform, those e-commerce platforms are part of your ecosystem. If you're using software to track your sales and your stock and the different elements relating to your business, all of those things are part of your ecosystem. If you've got any questions, put them in the chat. When I finish the presentation, we will go to all of the questions in the chat, by the way. And then people that provide services. So think about if you stock your clothes in a retail store, and that retail store has a sales team that are promoting the products that they're stocking to different types of brands and to different types of users, all of those people are part of your ecosystem. It's the same thing, whatever creative sector you are, the creative activity is only one part. So even if you're in music, think about the streaming platforms. If you use Boomplay or Apple Music or Spotify, all of those platforms are part of the music ecosystem. If you are in film, the cinemas are part of the ecosystem. And when you think about the cinema, the person selling popcorn in the cinema, they work in the creative industries, right, as well. If there was no cinema, they would not have that job, right? In the cinema, there are also broadcasters that stream film content or television content. All of those people are working in the creative industry. So it's very important for you as entrepreneurs, particularly if you're entrepreneurs delivering a product or service, to be honest, to not only think about your product, you need to think about the distribution of the product, you need to think about the consumption of the product, in addition to the creation of the product or the service. There are also cross-cutting activities that happen in the creative industries. So there are education providers, for example. Again, if you're a one-man business, you probably don't need to think about it. Once you start to scale, you need to start thinking about, right, if I need pattern cutters, for example, to scale my dressmaking business, I need to know what schools are training the pattern cutters, right? If I'm doing a digital platform for fashion distribution, I need to know who's training the software developers and what kind of training are they getting, so that I know the sort of skills that are out there that I can hire. So as part of your ecosystem that you need to be aware of in your business is who's providing the education and the skills for the people that you're going to hire, but even for yourself, for the professional development that you need, right? And the things that you need to learn. And the providers can be public sector providers, they can be private sector providers, it can be long courses, short courses, they can be formal, informal, they can be through training, it can be through apprenticeships, internships. So there are different ways that education and skills are provided. There are other cross-cutting activities like management. Management looks different depending on the sector that you are. So if you are in music, for example, an artist manager, they're not an artist themselves, but they're the person that's managing the artist's career and managing the artist's time and opportunities, working with their agents and so on. We also have things like marketing and advertising services, public relations services, but also legal and accounting. Once you are a business, you need to start thinking about your books, and there's a session that will help you think about financial management, how you record sales, how you cost things. You need to have all of those services in the sector for it to work. The creative economy also includes intermediaries and advocates. So associations, hubs, accelerators like this one, so, organizations that support the sector and advocate for the sector. And then you have the public sector, ministries, departments, and agencies. And the ministry that's related to your work, often people that work in this sector only think about the Ministry of Culture or creativity, depending on what it's called in your country. But the truth is that many ministries affect the type of work you do. So the Ministry of Trade, for example, will often have lots of programs that don't say fashion specifically, but those types of programs will also be beneficial to you. Or the Ministry of Imports and Exports, depending on what they're called in your country, they can help you export if they have export development programs. Or Ministry of Investment, Ministry of Finance, all of these ministries of entrepreneurship, they have programs that relate to your sector, even if it doesn't say fashion, even if it doesn't say creative industry. So you have to be aware of what all of these ministries and departments and agencies of government are doing. And then the final set of stakeholders in the ecosystem is investors. And investors and funding, we do have a session on that. There are different types of funding and different types of investments. And we'll talk about that in that session. What you need to be aware of is that there are grant funders. Grant funders are funders that will give you money. They don't expect you to give them the money back. So the person that's getting $20,000 from this program is a grant. We don't expect you to give it back. Other types of funders will give you money and expect you to give them back with interest. Those are debt financiers or lenders. They're like banks. Other types of funders will give you money. They don't expect you to give money back, but they expect to own a part of your company. We call those equity investors. Those types of investors will get their money back when your business makes a profit or when you sell your business. So there are different types of investors and financiers, and they're all parts of the ecosystem. So you should be aware of them, because if you don't know who they are, how they work, how are you going to get money from them? I've talked about the jobs in the creative economy a little bit, but I'll just expand on it a bit more. I mentioned that there are different types of workers in the creative economy. Not everyone that works in the creative economy is a creative, and not everyone that works in the creative economy is an artist. So we have creative jobs in creative sectors are one type of job in the creative economy. Samaila, can you please stop annotating on the screen? We have creative jobs in creative sectors. So that would be fashion designers or musicians or performers or designers. Those are all creative people working in creative sectors. We also have creative people working in non-creative sectors. So imagine if you're a graphic designer working in a car manufacturing company. You are creative, but you're not working in the creative industries because you're working outside of the sectors in the creative industries. Or imagine if you're a designer, interior designer, but maybe you work in a construction company. So you're a designer, but you're not working in a creative company because you're working in construction. You're still a creative, and you're working in the creative economy. So that's considered a creative economy job. Educators, and I know that there's some trainers on this program, are also in the creative economy. Whether you're teaching music in a primary school or art in a primary school, to whether you're a fashion lecturer in a fashion school, if you're a trainer or a teacher in any artistic or creative discipline, then you are in the creative economy. Then we have people that are in like engineering jobs or technical jobs working in the creative industries. So if you think about a carpenter that does sets, that designs sets, they're in a technical or a vocational job, but they're working in a film set, so they're working in the creative economy. Or think about an engineer, a sound engineer that works on film sets, they're also working in the creative economy. Or a virtual reality expert that's working in a fashion company, also working in the creative economy. Then we have people in management and executives, like people that work in strategy, that work in project management. They're not creatives, but they're working in the creative economy. Then we have people that work in technology and digital. So think about digital marketing people, people that are web managers, people that are coding, but working in the sector, they're all working in the creative economy. Then we have the important support services. So lawyers that help you draft your contracts, and you'll have a session on governance and legal as part of this program. Accountants that help you do your books. They're all professional services. If you're working in evaluation, or if you're a hub manager for a hub that services creative companies, these are all roles that are in the creative economy, but are not necessarily creative jobs. And then we have, of course, the public sector. And then this, I'm coming to the end of my speaking, because it'll be very good to hear from yourselves. We'll use most of the time to answer your questions. But the fashion sector itself, you know, the last few slides I focused on the creative industry more generally. The fashion industry, more specifically, has quite a robust ecosystem and value chain, which you should be aware of. Because if you're going to scale your business, if you don't understand how your sector works, then you're very limited to what you know. And so this section is very important. So if you're making a product, whether it's a dress or a shoe or accessories, the first thing you always need to think about is, where does your product come from, right? Even if you're going to the market to buy fabric, it's useful for you to know where the fabric is manufactured, where it's produced, what are the advantages of the fabrics produced in that place versus other places, for example. Because the more you understand where your raw materials come from, the more you can predict what's going to happen with your supply. So I'll give you an example. So imagine that you're using fabric from a place like Ukraine. And then about a year ago, the war in Ukraine started. If you were aware that your fabric was coming from Ukraine, once the war started and you saw it in the news, you would know that there's potentially a problem with your supply, even though the supply has not yet been affected. Because remember, when the war starts today, there's still the shipment that's already in the market in your location. There's still the shipment that's on the sea, that's on its way to you. But you know that if the war continues, there will be a problem with your supply. So that's a reason why, if you know in advance, even before the problem occurs, you can start planning. It's the same thing for any type of supply that you're using, whether it's thread, whether it's equipment, whether it's even talent, whether it's even people. So if you're in a service-based business and a lot of your workers are from a particular, I don't know, training school, and you know that 90% of my workers were trained by this software school, and the software school closes. Meanwhile, you say you have an expansion plan where you're going to hire another 12 software developers, and then that school has now closed. You know that, oh, that school doesn't exist anymore. So that supply of people that I thought I was going to get. So whether you're making clothes or whatever, or service, you need to know the inputs to what you're producing. Where do they come from? And you need to be aware, so that if there's any problem with that place where it comes from, you can predict that it will how it will have an impact on your business, and you can do something about it. Now, there are also service providers that we've talked about, whether it's legal or financial or strategy advice or web, whatever type of service. You also need to be aware of the ecosystem of providers that are providing that. And then you also need to know the uses for what you're producing. So let's say you're a textile producer. I remember somebody, Echo Design, that was in the chat. Imagine you're a textile producer. You need to think about who can use what you're producing. An obvious place is clothing and fashion, but have you thought about using your textiles for interior design? Have you thought about using your textiles for furniture, for construction, for healthcare, for uniforms, for hospitals, right? A lot of public and private hospitals will use their sort of regular plain designs, but have you ever thought, oh, actually, this could be a market for me? Could I aim to be supplying uniforms to a school or a hospital or an office? So you need to know the different places where your fabric or your clothing can be used. Hotels, there's so many use cases. But if you don't understand this journey or this ecosystem of what your sector is, then you're only narrowing down your focus to probably what you know. You need to be aware of the distribution and retail. We've talked about that. You need to be aware of the consumption of your product, whether it's private consumption or public consumption. And increasingly, you need to be aware of recycling and disposal. It's not enough to make it and sell it. Increasingly, fashion companies are thinking about how their goods are disposed. And many brands are now talking about how you can return the clothing that they've made for you so that they can recycle it and they use it to make other products, but also so that they can promote response because of climate change and environment that's dedicated to the circular economy. You talk about that in more detail then. So the main the ecosystem in fashion and the creative economy is really for you to understand that you don't operate in a vacuum. Number one, you have to be aware of all the factors that can impact on your business. And one of those factors is trends. When I say trend, I mean a general direction in which something is developing or changing. So an example of a trend is that during COVID-19, a lot of businesses moved their services online. So we know that that's something that's getting more common. In fact, if not for COVID, I don't think we would be doing this program as a 100% virtual program, because we probably would have thought it's not possible. But now there's an increase in digital activity. So that's an example of a trend. So you need to know the trends in the fashion industry. And when I'm talking about trends, I don't mean what's reigning or what's trendy. I mean, how has creative production changed in the last 5 years, in the last 2 years, in the last 10 years? How has distribution and consumption changed of your product in the last 2 years, in the last 5 months? You need to be tracking all these things because they give you ideas and inspire you on what to do, but they also help you predict what's going to come. And that's what will help you protect your business from shocks. If you're following the trends to know what's happening with all these things, then you're making more sensible business decisions that enable your business to thrive. So I'll give you an example in terms of policy trend. If you see that a country is increasingly moving towards cutting down its carbon emissions, and then maybe they announce that by the year 2027, we're going to limit equipment that run on diesel for the sake of argument. Let's say they announce that. If you're following that trend, you're not then going to do a business plan that says, in 2026, I'm going to buy 10 diesel generators, because you know that in 2027, the government is going to put a ban or a tariff on it. So that's what we mean by you need to be tracking the trends that relate. If the government says, oh, we're going to the import of cotton fabric, we want to support local production. If you're not following the trends of what the government is doing, then you're going to base your business on cotton. And then by a cutoff time, they say, oh, we're no longer importing. And then that's when you now start thinking about how to solve that. Meanwhile, if you were tracking what they were doing, maybe you'll know 12 months before, 8 months before, 2 weeks before, whatever. But at least you start to make a plan. You can start to think about other fabrics. You can start to think about other suppliers and other ways of achieving what you want for your business. So that's what we mean by you need to know your ecosystem and you need to follow the trends so that you know what's happening. So I'm going to ask people now to put in the chat, what trends are you seeing in your sector and your country? What types of trends? An example, in Malawi, many fashion brands in their sector are marketing their products on social media, especially Instagram. So that's an example of the way that they see that something is developing in that country. So any ideas of trends? Do you want to put them in the chat? Franklin, the fashion industry diagrams begins with the chemical industry. Yes, when we're talking about chemical industry, we're talking about for synthetic fabric, for example, but for more natural fabrics, then yes, the raw material for the supply, which is why I gave the example about Ukraine and the fact that in a country like Ukraine, if you're getting your fabric from Ukraine or the cotton for your fabric is from Ukraine, then that's an example where that activity will affect you. So Blessing says in Nigeria, whoops, the comments are coming very fast. Blessing says in Nigeria, fashion designers are using content creation to promote their products like short clips and lifestyle videos. That's interesting. Jacobina from Namibia says, fashion brands in their sector are tailoring their products towards traditional wear with a modern touch. Stella says many fashion brands in Nigeria are niching down in specialization. Deborah says a major trend that they've seen is that fashion businesses are incorporating more tech in their operation. Caroline from Kenya says many fashion brands are hiring social media influencers. Sineha from Cameroon is talking about more made in Africa goods and the use of more digital. Gloria from Nigeria has said many fashion schools have moved to online. In Madagascar, many fashion businesses import their products, even though the country has textile factories. That's interesting. South Africa, local brands are focusing on slow fashion and conscious production. That's interesting and it's important for environmental sustainability. Tabiso says many fashion designers in South Africa are culture specific and displaying the diverse South African culture. Olayemi and Farida are talking about social media. Farida is talking specifically about Instagram. Juan, absolutely. Government banning the importation of secondhand clothes is a trend. It's absolutely a trend because if, as I was saying before, so the fashion ecosystem is a lot of people, including people importing and selling secondhand. So if, for example, you're using, I don't know, for the sake of argument, you use buttons from secondhand clothing for your fashion, maybe because you found out that they're more durable or whatever. If the government is banning secondhand clothing, then you need to start thinking about that supply chain. But on the converse, if the government is banning secondhand clothing, that could be an opportunity for you because the people buying secondhand clothing, why are they buying secondhand clothing? Maybe because it's cheaper, maybe because it's more accessible. So as a fashion brand, when you see that trend, you can start to think, okay, how can I capitalize on that trend to fill the gap that ban is going to create? I remember, Juan, in countries like Kenya, I've seen reports where a lot of uniforms, people buy lots of uniforms from secondhand. So if the government bans secondhand products in such a country, it means there's a huge market that has been created for uniforms. How might your business respond to that? Uma talks about rise and ready to wear. Nomonde talks about the boom of bridal fashion in Malawi. Linda is talking about social media in Kenya. C4 is talking about upcycling and thrifting in South Africa. Abikwanin is talking about social media, the use of social media, especially WhatsApp in Congo. So all of these things are spot on. Franklin is talking about, a negative trend in Cameroon, textile waste from the industry. many fashion designers know little about their carbon footprint and they're not concerned. There's a session in this program that talks about circular fashion and the circular economy, which would be interesting for you all. Mariam is talking about Pinterest and WhatsApp in Congo. So yeah, all of these are trends. And so I think you all know what I'm talking about. You need to do more and more, like just dedicate time, research, talk to people, go for events, ask questions so that you can see the trends in your sector, and it can help you spot opportunities, but also pivot if you need to. Amadou from Guinea says there's more consumption of Chinese products in their country. Gambia say private schools are starting to use batik and tie-dye fabric for Friday uniform. That's very interesting. I'm going to be in the Gambia next week, actually. And Babukar, email me. It'll be good to meet up. So yeah, you all understand the concept of trends. I'm going to take questions now. And while you're typing your questions, I want to just share with you some resources that you can look at. Overview of the global fashion industry statistics. There's a Fashionomics Africa report. There's Africa Fashion Stats. There's a question, is there a specific platform to get firsthand of this information? Deborah, the answer is no. Even by these resources I've shared with you 4 different sources where you can get information. Unfortunately, there isn't any one place you can get information. That's a business opportunity. If you decide that I'm going to be the one-stop shop for all you wanted to know about Nigerian fashion and didn't, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that would buy from you, or Gambian fashion or Mozambican fashion, whatever sector. Babka, I'll see if I can come to the trade fair. I'll let you know. We can share these links on the WhatsApp group, absolutely. We can do that. And we can share it in the chat as well. Omalabake, if you can do that for me, please. Any other questions? We've still got another half an hour or so. So please, let's have your questions, any questions that you've got. There was a question about whether we will provide a stipend for data for the program. Unfortunately, the answer is no. We hope that does not impede your participation, but we will not be doing that. How can you join the WhatsApp group? We had shared links to join the WhatsApp group, but Omalabake, I reckon you can put the links in the chat here. And people can access the WhatsApp group from here. How can you get the Zoom recordings? There's a platform called Moodle platform. We will send you the login details shortly. Every week after the session, the recordings will be uploaded to Moodle after a few days. Any other questions on ecosystem trends? I'm yet to receive the link for the WhatsApp group. Omalabake, can you put the link in the chat here, the WhatsApp chat? And then we can just add people to the WhatsApp group. Mildred has not received the link. A new trend. Abigail, you are annotating on the screen. Actually, can we stop people from annotating on the screen? Are we going to get the slides? You will get the recordings, and the recordings have all the slides in it because it's recorded. So what you will get is a full recording. Does the program include mentoring? So the help desk is a mentoring feature. So if you want any specific advice, send your request to the help desk and it will be responded to. If you get to the top 25, you will get more tailored support for pitching, around pitching for business and developing pitch decks. And so that stage has more one-to-one mentoring. The opportunity for networking, Kasham, is on WhatsApp. So after every session, we open the WhatsApp chat for a few hours for people to introduce themselves and to network. So all of the networking is on WhatsApp. My colleagues are sharing the WhatsApp link on the chat. So if you're not yet in the WhatsApp group, do join. Jacobina is asking, as an entrepreneur, based on the trends in my sector, is it necessary to pivot towards the trend? How do I still keep the unique proposition of my business and keep up with the trends at the same time? So my point about the trends, so trends does not mean what's popular in this context. I don't mean if everybody is using I don't know, Kente in their work, you too should go and use Kente. That's not what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is you need to be aware of the different developments in your sector. So a good trend was Juan from Rwanda mentioned that a growing trend is that the government is increasingly clamping down on secondhand goods. Now, for every business, what you do with that will be different. For some businesses, so if you're a couture, fashion, luxury brand, you don't care if the government is banning secondhand because you don't buy secondhand, your customers don't buy secondhand. The ban doesn't affect your customers. It means nothing to you. If you are a brand that your target is the low-end mass market, and you see that the government is banning secondhand, that's a massive opportunity for you because you then need to think about what's the market opportunity that's created by the ban and how can I fill that gap? So what you do with the trends, there's no specified reaction. It's just for every trend that you're tracking, you just need to see how does this change over time affect my business? So when I'm talking about trends, Jacobina, I'm not saying if everybody's using Instagram, use Instagram. You just need to be aware. So if everybody's using Instagram, why are they using Instagram? And then you think about it, is my customer on Instagram? If they're not, then it probably doesn't apply to you. It's just, if you don't know what's happening in the ecosystem, which is why we started from the ecosystem, if you don't know what's happening in the ecosystem, if you don't know the trends in the ecosystem, then things happen to you and all you're doing is reacting. You're never getting to a point where you're strategically thinking, okay, I predict that that's going to happen in 3 years' time. Therefore, I'm going to do this now so that I will benefit from it in 3 years' time, that kind of thing. With the rise in AI, how do you think the creative sector will be affected? How can we protect ourselves from that? That's a very interesting question. Think about this question. I'm probably going to say your name wrongly, but Bule Benkosi. Think about when photography was invented. I'm sure the painters and portrait makers were thinking, with the rise in photography, how do you think the creative sector will be affected? How can we protect ourselves from that? Or when Google was invented, I'm sure somebody was sat there thinking, how will we protect ourselves? So there are two answers to that. Number one is that change is inevitable. And with all of these technologies, the first question should be, how can I use this technology to improve my business? So I've seen use cases where people are using artificial intelligence to create designs, which is saving time on design, which you may argue that a designer will lose their job, but guess who will get a job? Is somebody that knows how to use the software, or somebody that's building the software, or somebody that's able to add a value-added product on top of that software. So I think that's the first thing, is think about how can I use the technology. The second thing, Bule Benkosi, is there will be challenges. So for example, legal challenges, because the way that artificial intelligence works is it's trained on lots of existing data and lots of existing material. So at the moment, there's a massive debate on whether the people who have the data that is used to train the AI get value from the things that the AI produces. There's no real answer to that. because there's no legislation at the moment, not really. There are no precedents. It hasn't been taken to court for there to be a judgment for us to know this is a precedent we can rely on. So that's one thing to think about. But I would say as a small business, realistically, you cannot fight AI. Think about how can I use it? What are the things it can help me improve? Is it my bookkeeping? Is it my marketing materials? What can it help me do? I see that King Quabs has put in the chat how they used AI to design something on TikTok. I can't open the link while we're here. So this is exactly what I'm saying, is think about how you can use it. Because if you're spending too much time thinking about how you can protect yourself, and I'm not saying don't think about it by all means, but you can't get ahead of it. It's inevitable. Change is inevitable. We first had the printing press, then we had all kinds of technological inventions, then we had photography, then we had digital photography. So think about how all of these things happen over time and know that it's inevitable. What do you think is the future of the leather industry in the next 5 to 10 years, especially with the rise of animal rights and carbon issues? That's a very good question, Sarah Mume. I hope I said your name correctly. So the circular class will focus a lot more on this, but I think potentially real leather, the more sustainable we have to be with things like animal production and so on, real leather will become more and more expensive because the inputs to meet the sort of standards will be higher. Maybe the volume of production will be lower, perhaps, particularly if you're thinking about methane emissions from cattle and that kind of thing. And so that scarcity will potentially mean that the leather industry sees a threat. Now, having said that, Africa still contributes less than 2%, I think, of global carbon emissions, despite everything that we're saying. And there's a lot of debate at the moment about why Africa should be penalized for the carbon emissions of the rest of the world. So while leather may become expensive globally, on the converse, in some locations, it might mean an opportunity. So if, for example, you're like me in Nigeria we eat animal hides, cow hides, we call it pomo. It's like a delicacy in Nigeria. It's very low value. So it's cheap meat, in quotes. If leather is going to become a really expensive global product, if you're sat in Nigeria and you're eating all your pomo, that may become a massive business opportunity where you decide, actually, I'm not going to eat pomo anymore. As a country, we'll say, no, we're giving up pomo. Instead, we're going to be raising the same number of cows, but using the leather to supply the global leather supply chain and get more value for the leather. So that kind of trend where something is leading to something being more expensive, it's a problem for someone somewhere, but it's not a problem for everybody everywhere. So this is, again, what I was talking about, how you use trends, the information about trends. For some people, it will create a problem. For other people, it will create an opportunity. For some people, it will make no difference. So you need to think about all of these things as you think about your business. Abu Mohammed is concerned with this type of program because he's not sure when the transparency in awarding the financial support. So Abu, the way that we select, we have 5 to 7 judges. For the last session that we had a judge from South Africa, we had a judge from Malawi, we had a judge from Kenya, we had a judge from Cote d'Ivoire in Abidjan, and all of those judges decided who got the money. They don't know each other. It's a session where they all come, there's a scoring sheet, they score. So there's transparency in the process. And so as long as you meet all the requirements, you pass the exam, you meet all the requirements, then you stand a good chance as anybody in this program. iPhone XS Max. We don't know who that is. So Max, who said technology is inevitable, you have to adapt. We actually don't know who you are. So for attendance, you need to change your Zoom name to your actual name, because otherwise we will mark you absent for this class because we won't know who you are. Will notes be sent to you after each session? Eda, no, you will not be sent notes. You will be able to access the recording on Moodle. Any other questions? We've still got a bit of time if people still have questions. If there are no further questions, we can just add you to the WhatsApp if you're not there yet. And then we can open the WhatsApp for networking, for you to introduce yourselves to each other and know who is on the session. There's a question, what happens if you can't take the exam on the day? Could you write another time? So no, unless you have a medical reason or any other reason that can be substantiated for not taking the exam on the day. And if you do have that situation, we will ask you to provide the evidence. So if you're sick, for example, we'll ask you to provide a medical report. I don't know, if you are flying and you couldn't change your flight, we'll ask you to provide the flight ticket or your boarding pass, that kind of thing. So if the only reason is you can't make it, then that will not be accepted. But if there's a reason and you can provide evidence of why, then you can do it on another day. Deborah, what can you say about paying someone to train them? I don't know what this question is in relation to, unfortunately. So if you can provide a bit more context, I can try to answer. Bulebenkosi is asking King Quabs, I think, what AI did you use to design this? Very beautiful content. All the sessions are online. There's a question from Belinda. How will the exams be written? The exam is on Zoom, so you will log on to a Zoom call and then you will be sent a link to an exam and you will do it online. Deborah, employing a less proficient person on a salary basis so as to work in an organization. I'm afraid I still don't understand. Because I don't know at what point you were asking that question. So Deborah, sorry, if you can just write your question in full. Kasham, 100%, every single thing on the program is online. The pitching, the networking, the help desk, everything is online. The exam is a quiz. It will be an online quiz and you will log into a Zoom call like this, and then we will issue the exam and then it's timed and so on. Okay. Somebody needs to leave in an hour. Needs to only stay an hour. I'm presuming you mean 1 hour today. That's fine. Oh, right. Gosh. Okay. Deborah, now I understand your question. So you talked about education and training. So I was asking if it's professional to employ someone who is less proficient and still place them on payroll. That's a very, very good question, Deborah. So one of the sessions on this is managing your team and working with people. It's always a trade-off. So the more qualified a person is, typically, the more value you can get from them. Because they're more experienced, they're more networked, probably, they just know the job better, right? At the same time, if you can't afford it, the promise of future benefits is not enough for you to invest in hiring that person. So for every business, you need to make a judgment. As a manager, as an entrepreneur, you need to make a judgment. Even I, as managing partner of the creative economy practice, it's a judgment that I have to make still now. If I'm hiring somebody, I'm thinking, what do I need this person to do? If it's high risk, high value, then I need to say, right, maybe it costs me more in the short term, but because I think it will be high value, I will go with the better qualified, more expensive personnel. But the reality is you can do that if you have the money to do that. Sometimes you don't even have the choice. This is all you can afford. In which case, the next best thing is to hire what you can afford, but design systems and processes and tools that make it easier for that person to do the job to the quality that you need it to be done. And so the less qualified they are, the more guidance you have to give them, the more tools you need to give them, the more structure and processes you need to give them. So that's, Deborah, does that answer your question? There's a whole session on managing staff and managing teams. But my point is there's no one answer. There's always a trade-off. The reality is the more experienced the person is, the more value they can probably add. But sometimes you have to make a choice that you hire a less qualified person, but it does mean you as the founder or you as the manager, you have to dedicate more time to working with that person and give them more tools and support. The community training is going to be a Zoom meeting like this on different topics. It's just that it will be a bigger group of people. And so you will have the opportunity to network with a bigger group of people. There are 2 of those community events. Both of them are going to be in April. Another Deborah is saying, what was the question? Video sessions consume more data. You can turn off your video if you are concerned about your data, and that's fine. So you don't have to use video. At the beginning, we said turn on your camera if you can. If you can't, for whatever reason, feel free to turn it off. Bulem Benkosi is asking, is it ethical to hire entrepreneurs on a contract basis and paying them as they sell? So that's tricky. So if you pay pattern makers and tailors and paying them as the stuff sells, there are many things to consider. One is the business belongs to you, right? As the entrepreneur, you get value you get the most value from the business. So there's a logic to you being paid for your payment to be delayed, because the business belongs to you. As it grows, you keep getting more value and more value and more value. The pattern maker is an employee. They get less value out of your business. The value they get is the salary that you pay them. So if you defer that salary, then you're disadvantaging them because they're sharing in your pain, in quotes, but they're not sharing in your glory, because when you make profits, you're not sharing it with them, presumably. So I would say that if you, because of your financial situation, you say you want to pay people on a contract basis, then you need to think about, are you asking them on as an equity partner? Do they own part of the business? Will they share in the profits? And is that something that you'll be willing to consider? Because otherwise it'll be one-sided. You're inviting them to share in the problem, as I've mentioned, but not in the benefit that you will reap as an entrepreneur. Another thing to think about is the economic situation and the backgrounds. You as the entrepreneur, you may be able to delay payments, and maybe you can't, right? But the pattern maker or your tailor, they're probably even less in a position to delay payments. So there isn't any one size fits all, but I would say that typically, if somebody is not sharing in the benefit of the business, i.e. the profits, the growth, if you sell the business, you keep all the money. If they're not sharing in that, then you really shouldn't be asking them to share in the the lean time. You should pay people as they work. Is there going to be media exposure for anyone in the program? So, or at various points in the program, we promote different participants in the program. The top 12 for sure, they get exposure during demo day. And then various other participants in the program. We're doing a program documentary. For the last demo day, we invited some people that were not in the top 12 to present their businesses. So at various points in the program, there will be different opportunities for media as they arise. We've got requests to invite people on the program for different events. So those come up on a bit of an ad hoc basis, but for the top 12 for sure. Kemi is asking, when you're setting up a standard business organization, is it advisable to employ a person with 2 or more qualities to handle more than one section just because they have the capability to do so? So I think what you're asking is one person doing 2 jobs. Like you can have a social media manager that's also your, I don't know, project manager for the sake of argument. The question, the answer, Oluwakemi, is it depends on the scale of work. So when you think about it, every working day, every working week has 5 working days. If your organization needs 2 days of social media and 3 days of project management, and you hire somebody, the same person, to do 2 days of social media and 5 days of project management, then that's fair. That's fair working conditions because they're deploying their skill sets, but you're realistic about the time they need to deliver what needs to be delivered. But if your business has 5 days work of social media and 5 days work of project management, and you say that the same person should do it, it means that you're asking them to do 2 jobs, which is not good employment practice. It's not fair to the person. And so the problem there is not that you're asking them to do more than one thing. The problem is that the scale of the work is more than one person can do. So I think that's the first thing to think about. I think the second thing to think about is the more your business grows, the more specialization you'll benefit from. Because the reality is probably that for most people, if you spend 10, 15 years in your career, then you've probably narrowed down your specialization to a few things, 1 or 2 things. And so the more experienced people are, the less willing and able they are to focus on multiple things. So I think it also depends on the stage of your business, but primarily you need to think about work conditions and work hours. If you're asking somebody to do more than one thing, you need to be thinking about their workload and making sure that you're not asking them to do more than one job, more than 5 days of a week or 6 days, however many days you do, but you shouldn't be asking them to do more than one job. Any other questions? There is no physical meeting whatsoever. Everything is online. Regarding attendance, what happens if the attendance is taken at the time the network? So the system says everybody who dialed into the call, we don't do it manually. So if you've logged in, we know when you logged in, we know when you logged off, we know when you logged back on, we know how long you were here. Zoom records all of that information. Okay. There's a question about I'm not sure I understand the questions. I'm not sure if it's about mentoring or monitoring, but the winner gets $20,000, and the $20,000, they say what they're going to do with the money, and then that's monitored to make sure they do it. The Zoom recordings will be on Moodle, and you will get a link to Moodle. The classes hold 2 times every week or 3 times every week. On Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, look at the schedule that we've sent. The schedule has the dates and the times for all the sessions. There will be certificates at the end of the week of the program. Certificates will only be for people who attend 70% of the sessions, who score 70% in the exams. Yeah, those are the people that get a certificate. Miriam is asking, Zoom registers your presence? Yes. So Zoom, we don't manually check if you're here. Zoom checks. There is one winner for this program. The mentorship and networking happens within the program. So networking is in WhatsApp. If you have any specific questions for our mentors and trainers, send us on the help desk. The link to the help desk, there's an email address for the help desk, which is where you can send an email if you want a specific question to be answered. Belinda, I wish we had 10 winners as well, but here we are. We've got one. You need to attend every session. No, you cannot choose to attend Wednesday or Thursday. Every session is compulsory. You need to attend 70% of the sessions. You have to attend every single session that we tell you to attend. So we don't repeat any session. If you miss a session, you have to use the recording, but you will be marked as absent for that session. Fatima is asking, yes, we will nudge you before every session, but you have the schedule. We've sent it to you by email. You've got it in your calendars, but we will also remind you on WhatsApp and by email. We've got just maybe 10 minutes to go. So if you have any last minute questions, my colleagues have put the link, the email address for the help desk on the chat. So if you have any questions that are specific to your business, then email us on that email address and we will respond. If you cannot stay till the end, let us know, email the help desk and let us know that you're not staying to the end. And that will be noted. If you don't stay for a full hour, if you don't stay for an hour of the session, then that's marked as absence. So that's for Bulembe courses, as asking if you are locked out 15 minutes into the meeting and you don't come back, that's absent. No, the WhatsApp list will not be sent to the WhatsApp group. If you attended, we will know. The list is automatically generated. So if you attended the session and stayed for the session, we will know. Sarah asked a question about load shedding. Unfortunately, that's why we know that people have to deal with various issues. And that's why we said you have to attend 70%. So we're giving you a 30% allowance in case, for whatever reason, you can't attend at those times. But there's one schedule for the program, and you have to attend based on the one schedule. If you've got unexpected issues, email the help desk and somebody will respond to you. I registered with my 3 names. Can I use 2 names? It's probably fine, but if there's anybody else with your 2 names, if your 2 names that you use as a common name, if there's anybody else with that same 2 names, it'll be difficult to identify you. So if you can, Brenda, put your 3rd name or put your initial. So I see a few people talking about South Africa having load shedding. many countries have load sheddings and many people have different issues, unfortunately. So the class is scheduled when the class is scheduled. You have the allowance to attend 70% live and 30% in your own time. Unfortunately, we can't deviate from that. You are not penalized if you come late for a session, but you have to be here for a sufficient amount of time. So 1 hour will be the cutoff. If you're not in the session for up to an hour, then you're considered absent from the session. Unfortunately, the session times cannot be adjusted. We've done a lot of research to find the time that works best. What I will suggest is that people, if you have to work, if you dial in on your lunch hour, you can catch at least 1 hour of the session. And if you did that, that will be considered that you have attended the session. Okay. There's question about Ramadan. I believe this person is asking if we can do the sessions after the Ramadan period. Unfortunately, not. Again, this is why you have 30% to attend it in your own time. We appreciate that this may make it a bit more difficult for people, but unfortunately, there are people from 3 or 4 different time zones in this program. And so it's not the same time for everybody. So it's difficult to change the timing. You can attend 70% in person and 30% you can use the recording. Yes, Fatima, the session is recorded in French as well as Portuguese and Arabic. So you can also get the recording on Moodle, which we will send a link. So no, you cannot get the materials to print. We will send you the recording, but you can take notes during the session. But for copyright reasons, and you will hear about copyright in the sessions, you will not be able to print the material. If you need to leave the session, feel free to leave. We're rounding up. We've got 3 minutes to go. And just a last point, there's somebody whose iPhone is called iPhone XS Max. We still don't know who you are. So you're going to be marked absent from this session because we will not be able to figure out who that person is. So you're going to be marked absent. Cool stuff. So thanks, everyone. We'll be in touch by WhatsApp, by email. We'll be in touch with the Moodle link. We've done 1 session now, 16 to go. Good luck to everyone. There'll be a different facilitator each time. I will see you again at the end of the program. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week.